Not enough people talk about this. And it's because we always display the ego as something evil, something dark, something that we need to kill, as in the ego death. But there's an emphasis behind the reasoning why we call it that. But the thing is, what if I told you the ego is not something bad? The ego is something that we must have in order for us to even exist in this physicality. But what if the perspective that we have of the ego is one that's distorted and not really serving us to our fullest, highest potential and our benefit? So on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you the difference between a healthy and a toxic ego. And when you can understand the difference, you will understand the importance behind your ego and how to work with it. Rather than making it an enemy, you start making it a servant. What is Gooch, you beautiful beings? Welcome back, AwakenOnes, on another episode on Embracing Ascension series with your homegirl, Brittany Fontanez. If you're new to this channel, welcome. I'm an intuitive shaman, healer, and psychic tarot reader. On this channel, I speak about emotional awareness. I always be fucking up, you guys. I'm always fucking up. But you still gotta love yourself. On this channel, I speak about spiritual development, emotional awareness. I do guided readings for each zodiac sign, and I talk about things I feel need to be talked about because our divine right to know more than what we have been told. And I feel everything that's helped me heal on my journey, I feel these golden nuggets are needed to be shared, and that's what I'm doing today. So if this message does resonate with you, or it assists you on your journey currently, then don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to this channel so you will always be notified on when I upload new videos. And it also helps the algorithm of YouTube to get this video out to other people who may need to hear it in the collective. So thank you so much for being here and supporting me on this journey, and as well as trusting me on your journey. But enough of that long ass intro. Let's get into this booze. Like I said in the beginning, I feel that there's not enough people talking about this, because in the spiritual community, a lot of people outside of the spiritual community, or even in the spiritual community, or even starting to awaken to it, they believe it's just love and light. And don't get me wrong, it is love and light. But we have a tendency to be toxic in a positive manner, and we have a tendency to bypass our bullshit. And this is how there is a distortion between the ego and the spirit, and how they both intertwine. It's not just one. You can't have one without the other. It's like wanting light without darkness, and wanting darkness without light. You need both. You need your ego, you need your spirit. So I'm going to explain to you the difference between what is your ego. The ego is not an entity. The ego is the flesh. It is the physical vessel in order for us to be grounded and rooted in this physicality. Now the spirit is your emotionality, meaning it's your heart, it's what you feel, it's what you are thinking on the inside. Now the ego is of the physicality, and it is of the logical mind, which is of the brain, which the brain is so fucking intelligent it made its own goddamn name. That's how fucking intelligent it is, and that's how logical it is as well. And that's how the ego is rooted. It's rooted in the physical. It's rooted in the rigidness, the density of this 3D matrix, not even the matrix, of this 3D essence. Now I would consider the matrix more like the job force, society and all that. But now that you know the difference between your spirit is your emotionality and your ego is your physicality, now that you know this, you can't escape from this. You can't run from it. You can't kill your ego. If you're going to kill your ego, you might as well kill yourself. And sorry to say that, but let's just be real. It's really true. If you are trying to kill your ego, you're killing the part of you that is needed in order for you to be here. So now that you know this, you see the importance of the mind, the importance of the logical, the importance of the ego. Now, there is a difference between a healthy ego and a toxic ego. The same way they say you can't eat too much good foods, like healthy foods, because it's not that good for you sometimes. It's weirdly to say, it's kind of like an odd thing like that. But just know, you guys, that the ego rules the physical. Now that you know this, now what makes the ego get rooted into toxicity? It's through pride. Now, here's the thing with pride, though. Since the ego is governed, it governs the physicality, and it's governed by pride. Pride is a consciousness of one's own dignity. So if the ego is of the physicality and it's rooted by being aware of self, as we want to perceive self, then what makes it toxic for us to need to have consistent ego deaths or need to put ourselves in check? It's because, like I said, pride is knowing one's own dignity, but that pride can turn into one's own selfishness and arrogance. And it's important to know this because we all go through this. We all go through being arrogant. We all go through thinking we know what's best. We all go through thinking that like we're a god. And don't get me wrong, you guys. We are forms of God in many different forms, but we are not God itself. We have to be mindful of this. But the ego can get rooted in such pride that it turns toxic because it only thinks of oneself and not others or anything at all. And that's how humility and humanity can get distorted and rid itself out of the spirit of what makes us human and what makes us a spiritual being. So now let's get into Now I want to get into how does knowing the difference help make or ruin relationships? Now that we understand the ego desires many things. When we're having this experience, we desire many things. And the main thing that ego desires the most is connection. And it's because it's the physicality. We're humans. We're not meant to be alone. We're meant to have connections. But the way that the ego can create its own sense of pride that it can make or break a relationship is by understanding that sometimes, let's just be real, sometimes we get into relationships for our selfish manners. We get into relationships for our own selfish needs, not for the need of another, not for the need to grow, for the need of our own ego desires and fulfillment, hence instant gratification. And I want to share these tips with you, how to understand the healthy versus toxic ego, so you can understand how to help your relationship flourish rather than ruin it. Because I feel in my journey so far, I've been in relationships for my own selfish needs, and I did not realize that. That's why I didn't know how to appreciate it. That's why I didn't know how to appreciate another person. That's why I wasn't emotionally available, because I got into a relationship because my ego was lonely. My ego was in a toxic state. But now that I was aware of realizing what the meaning of a relationship really is, but also being aware of how I've been the maker or the breaker of it, has really been able to help me develop a healthy ego. So my goal here today, my intention for this video, is for you to develop a healthy ego so you can actually start making healthier decisions in relationship, so you can have a long-lasting relationship rather than breaking them. So let's get into the signs of a toxic ego. And that is, I got three. What do I got? Three? Yeah, I got three. More like four, but I got three. So 3 signs that you know you have a toxic ego is in a relationship is control. You're always wanting to consistently control the other person or control the dynamic or the relationship or where it's headed. And this control really stems from a sense of abandonment, meaning you're fearful that the person will leave you if you don't do what's right. But also the state of control can come from neediness. Yes, you guys. The only reason why we control anything is because we're needy of a particular thing on the outside of us, because we believe that what's outside of us will give us the fulfillment that we've been desiring on the inside. Little do we know that control really stems from the fact that we didn't get that nurturing or that fulfillment as a child. Little do we know, subconsciously, the ego, if it didn't get what it needed in childhood, is going to find a way to fulfill it in adulthood. So this is why it's important to understand how your ego operates, because it's really operating from your inner child, from your wounds, from your traumas, from your joy. So it's really important to distinguish how the ego is operating so you can be the ruler of it rather than it being the ruler of you. So that is one sign of a toxic ego, is that you're always controlling and you're always needy a little bit, in a way where you think your way is the best way. Now, the second signs of a toxic ego is, this is a big one, you guys. This is a big one, and this is all over the entire fucking world. And that is, sex is the main priority. You're always lustful when it comes towards a relationship. It's never about the prioritizing of communication or actual unionship, of getting close to one another. The people who get into relationships are always ruled in their toxic ego, because they're always desiring sex. And let me tell you, sex is important, but if you think that's the only thing that's going to drive you and make a relationship and create a connection, then you're not really ruled by your heart. You're only ruled by your instant gratifications and the traumas that need a void to make sure it's fulfilled, so you don't feel any rigidness or disconnection. That's the only time we get triggered, you guys. The reason why we get anxious or triggered when we don't have something is because it's that trauma that needs to be filled. It's like when you're on a drug and you need it. It's kind of like that. It's the most weirdest shit ever, how the ego works and how our coping mechanisms work as a human. Now, that's the second sign. Now, the third sign that you have a toxic ego is that, this is a huge one, and I recognize this within myself, why I've ruined majority of my relationships because of my toxic ego. And this is a big one. That is, you know you have a toxic ego in a relationship when you're only thinking about what you can get from the relationship, and never about how you can develop it or give to it. That's crazy. It's crazy because it's so true. If you realize, a lot of relationships, it's always either one-sided or another person is doing the most for another person. You know, I was watching, I'm currently going to school for acting classes. Well, not going to school, but I'm going to acting classes. And I watched, like, improvs of the new Elvis movie. And I read it, like, I heard a little bit about his story and about him and his wife and stuff. And she was saying how he molded her to be what he needed. And little did she know, he was molding her to being his mother. Because he needed that nurturing, he needed that love, because she literally just passed away before getting with this girl. So it's like he tried to mold this girl into his mother to fulfill that need, without those voids, those traumas. You see how it is? It's crazy how our adult dynamic relationships are played out from the dynamics we had in our parents as a child. And the reason for that is because our parents teach us love, our love language. Our parents teach us our beliefs. Our parents teach us life. And this is how we build a perspective about life as we get older. And this is how majority of us have a distorted perspective of love, because we learned it from our parents. And this is how a lot of us can only want a relationship out of selfish needs, to get our needs met. We never think about the other person, how we could benefit them. So, and another thing too I want to share when it comes to that is that we always rely on another person to fulfill our needs, when it's our job to do the inner work of what is bothering us in order to fulfill that need. Majority of us want another person to fulfill the needs that feel empty within us, because we are lacking doing the inner work and being aware of ourselves and what we need, when it's our responsibility. So it's crazy how all this intertwines, you guys. But once you can understand all of this, it's important, because when you're in your toxic ego, sometimes you can depolarize your own energy. Meaning that if you're a woman and you're always controlling, and you're coming from a wounded feminine energy, and that wounded place is depolarizing potentialities, meaning men coming towards you, because you're not allowing them to be in their masculine energy, because you're always in your masculine energy. Now for men, you're coming from a wounded masculine place where you're not in your masculine energy, so you're always tuning into the feminine, and therefore she has to be in her masculine energy, because she can't be in her feminine energy, because you're always in your feminine energy. So that depolarizes the potentiality of a unionship coming together in harmony, because you're not in your natural vibration. So women, when you're in your masculine, you depolarize the masculine energy. Men, when you're in your feminine energy, you depolarize the feminine energy, because you're too much in your feminine energy. So when you can understand these dynamics and understand how the toxic ego works, then you'll be able to be aware of, oh, I see how I'm sabotaging, or how I'm pushing away, or how I'm holding on too tightly. It's crazy once you start to be aware of your own toxic tendencies and what's causing the suffering in your own life. Because little do we know, the reason why majority of relationships don't work out is because of us too. We got to take responsibility of that. Now, let's jump into a healthy ego. How to develop a healthy ego once you recognize your toxic tendencies of what your ego can do to manipulate matter into getting what it wants. So now, a healthy ego in order to make your relationship, and this is really important, you guys, that is speaking your truth regardless of the polarization. Now, what I mean by that is that you have respect for yourself and you have respect for another, meaning that you're always willing to stand up for yourself regardless of tension or dissatisfaction that you create, because your needs are being heard and your feelings matter. So a healthy ego in order to make a relationship is by speaking your truth regardless if you won't be heard, if you won't be understood, or if you won't be loved because of that. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is still respecting yourself, but also respecting another. Having the vulnerability and the courage to speak up for yourself will make a relationship, because you're bringing honesty to the table, and that person will have no choice to bring that in return or clearly show you who they are and if they're deserving of you or not. Hey, ain't that some shit? So a healthy ego can help build a relationship by bringing vulnerability together and honesty, or it can help make a relationship by letting go of someone who doesn't deserve you, or if you don't deserve them. We got to be honest. Now, the second sign of a healthy ego is, I love this one. This one's my favorite, and that is knowing your vibe and owning it regardless if you stand out. So a lot of us, the reason why relationships don't work out, because we're always tuning into the other person. We're always worried about the other person. And this causes us to neglect ourselves and only be ruled by our suffering. Because when we neglect ourselves and always seeking validation, always seeking approval or attention from another person or love itself, when we neglect ourselves, what we're allowing the ego to do is be ruled by that suffering and allow it to guide us through toxicity, because we haven't resolved the pain within us. So because of this, it's important for us to recognize that in order for our ego to become healthy and not be ruled by the trauma, not be ruled by the voids, not be ruled by the suffering, is owning your vibe and sitting in your body. Majority of us don't feel safe within our own bodies. This is why we tune to other people, because as a child we had to tune to other people to feel safe in our environment. So as we get older, we have the tendencies that empaths, or people that really care or have big hearts, we tune to other people to the point we neglect ourselves, and we lack setting boundaries, and we lack letting ourselves be known, and we lack seeing our own worth. So a healthy ego comes from knowing your vibe, owning it, and don't care if you stand out, and don't care if people like you. Because at the end of the day, when you know your worth, you are going to attract people who are going to respect your worth. And that is the goal here, is for you to know your worth, to see your worth, to own it, and make sure that you are only getting energy from the inside of that, and allowing the outside to reflect that in return, so you get what you deserve. So, and not only that, knowing your vibe and owning it teaches you emotional independence, but it also teaches you emotional availability. A lot of people get into relationship for selfish reasons, to the point that they end up depleting themselves trying to get another person's attention or validation or love. And when they do this, they actually, little do we know, you are emotionally unavailable and codependent on that person. So having a healthy ego really stems from being emotionally independent, knowing your worth, knowing who you are, knowing what you like, your hobbies, without needing another person in your life. But it also means that you are emotionally available, meaning that your heart is open enough to be available for another person and to be available for yourself as emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical support. So, and you might be asking, but how does a healthy ego make you emotionally available? It makes you emotionally available because when you know your worth, you can see another person's worth. And when you know what you deserve, then you can see what another person deserves, because you're doing it for yourself. So therefore, that makes you emotionally available because you see what you need. So therefore, you're able to see what another person needs. You get what I'm saying? So hope that helps you guys. I hope this makes sense so far. Now, the last one to know how to develop a healthy ego. That is, this one's a big one. Because the ego, man, listen, let's just be real. The reason why the world is the way that it is because we're ruled by toxic feminine and toxic masculine energy. Meaning that we're so wounded that we're closed off and our hearts are closed, and we just try to do things in the moment that make us forget how we feel. And then toxic masculine energy is always about getting what I want and not giving a shit about anything else and not giving. We're ruled by these two energies in such a toxic way now, to the point that our ego is so flustered. And what I mean by flustered, it's so like, what's that word? Gassed up. It's lit up. Your ego is so lit up. It's full of its fucking self. And when the ego is full of itself in a toxic way, what happens? It always wants things its way, and it only thinks its way is the best way. So the way to go from a toxic ego like that to a healthy ego is this. And that is not always wanting it your way. Accepting and flowing with life. A toxic ego, like I said, wants to be controlled, wants things its way. But a healthy ego understands that even though it exists and it has an importance here, the world doesn't revolve around itself. It knows that there's a lot more to learn. It knows that there's a lot more that it could become. It knows that in order to get what it needs in a healthy way, it has to accept life. It has to learn to love. It has to learn to be open and accepting of another person. A healthy ego means that you know that you're not perfect, and therefore you can see the imperfections of another, but you know that you're still lovable, and therefore you're accepting and lovable of another person. So a healthy ego can make you realize that not having it your way is the best way, because it teaches you how to accept a person and love them unconditionally. And it teaches you how to flow with life to the point you can surrender and trust that you're always being taken care of, and you're always being listened to, and you always will get what you are desiring. So, you guys, those are my ways of healthy versus a toxic ego. And when you can actually be able to find your own way to decipher, what is healthy, what is not healthy within you, and also create your own strategies and your own techniques to shift your paradigm into more of a healthy ego, I guarantee you guys, your relationships will get a lot better. Your relationships get a lot better. Your love language will get a lot better. And not only that, you'll finally get what you were wanting to receive. But you'll also see how there is an infinite flow of giving and receiving. And when you can harmonize with that, you will understand that a relationship is really here to teach you how to be a better person. A relationship is here how to teach you to be a better person. A relationship is not here to satisfy your ego, satisfy your lust, satisfy your sadness, your loneliness, your whatever. A relationship is here to teach you how to be a better person. A relationship is here how to teach you to be a better lover, be a better friend, be a better caretaker, be a better parent, be a better, daughter, sister, whatever. A relationship is always here to teach you how you can be better than who you used to be. And if you're in a place where you only desire a relationship because you're lonely, because you're sad, because you're horny, a relationship will not do you good. And I'm just being honest. So I share all this with you to help you be aware of your toxic ego, so you can stop ruining relationships and stop creating the habitual cycle of pain that keeps you in the state of loneliness. When you can recognize your toxicity, then you can change what is causing you to attract that in your life, to create that suffering over and over and over. And when you can realize this, you'll be able to end your suffering and start to make better decisions that are healthy for you in order to attract what is better for you. Oh, I like all this rhyming, you guys. But other than that, beautiful beings, that is all I have to share with you today. on healthy versus toxic ego and how pride can make or break a relationship. And I really hope this benefited you guys in the best way possible, and I really hope that you can implement any of these exercises in your current relationships or in your current love life if you are single, in order to attract better. And let me know your feedback in the comment section below. What evidence that you receive when you do apply these steps that I've shared with you today. But other than that, if this resonated with you, if this helped you in any way, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification button so you won't miss out on any videos. And want to book any healing sessions or personal readings with me, all that information will be down in the description box below. But other than that, you beautiful beings, I really hope this benefited you in the highest way possible. And until then, I'll see you in the next one. All right.